4 weeks without racing in the summer break is enough to drive any MotoGP fan mad, which is why it's great that we've had a double hit directly after the break. Now, Brno might be freshest in your mind, but our journey actually started here in one of the most historic and largest capacity racing venues in the world. We are, of course, talking about the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the famous Brickyard. Now, you may know it best for car racing, but I'm pleased to say that the first ever race held here was with motorcycles, which makes it the ideal venue to welcome you to After the Flag.
Now, big change in the way to...
Well, this time on After the Flag, we're interviewing someone who's had a little bit of a resurgence this year and maybe even surprised a few people along the way. Valentino Rossi. Valentino,
Ciao.
thank you very much for joining us.
Ciao.
This year, well, it looks like you're having a lot of fun again riding on the bike, and I think your results are showing that. Do you feel like you've made a big step from last year to this year?
Yeah. I'm quite happy because at the end of last year I was a bit frustrated because I wasn't able to improve my pace enough for fight for the podium in every races. So I decided to change something, and was a big bet, you know. But I'm happy because this year I enjoy more. I was able to be stronger and more competitive, and especially faster on the race day. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of work to do. I have to improve because now the level is very high, especially Marquez, but also Lorenzo and Pedrosa are so fast. So we have always to work on the bike, always to improve, but I enjoy a lot.
Where did your motivation come from? I think lots of people will say you've got all these world titles, you've got all the fans, you've won most things. What makes you want to get up in the morning, go to the race weekend and race?
Is my greatest passion, and I enjoy a lot this work and this life. I like a lot ride the bike. I want to be part of the game. You have to don't think a lot about the past. I'm very lucky. I did a great career with a lot of important achievement. But if you want to be part of the game, you have to think at the future, how to improve and everything. So I want to continue. I signed another 2 years contract. So I want to try to make this part of my career more than 100%.
With these 2 years, obviously you're going to be even older. Now, I know you probably don't like talking about your age, but there was one interview where I think you said you're quite old, but fast. Do you think there's any real disadvantage with your age? I mean, do you feel old sometimes?
For me, not a lot. Yes, for sure. When I had 25, was different 10 years ago. But in the last years, not a lot. I think that if you are okay with the body, if you train harder, and especially if you have the right motivation, you can stay at the top in our sport for some other years.
But looking at it from the other side, obviously with age, you also have some advantages, the experience. Do you ever think that there are some things which are maybe easier for you than maybe for even Marquez?
For sure you have some disadvantage, but also some advantage. This is true. The very big experience, long experience, and the way to stay quiet and to take the races. With the long story, you always know that everything can change. You know, so is. You have also some advantages to be old.
Okay, perfect. In terms of the machinery, now you've experienced a lot of machinery, different types of bikes, I think different types of tires. At the moment, the level of bikes that we have, do you think this is the best kind of year, or would you like the technology to maybe be just a little bit older, maybe a little bit less electronics?
Yeah, sincerely, I like a lot this MotoGP. For a rider is great because you can go very fast. For me, it's important to don't make too much for the show, for the races, because our bike are very complicated with a lot of electronic, and we arrive to the very high level. But the important is that the race are fun for the riders and for everybody. You can have a fight with the other guys. And I think that the next year doesn't change a lot, but will be very, very interesting to understand what's happened in 2016, because looks like the regulation will change a lot, the MotoGP will change a lot, and I think that is not restart from zero, but close to.
Okay, but with these regulation changes, it's going to be another challenge for you, especially also with the change with the tyres. Now, I mean but what is the biggest change for you with these regulations? Because some people say spec electronics, big change, but I personally think tyres. I mean tyres are so important.
Yeah, but also electronic. I think that is half and half, or maybe anyway the electronic is more, but very, very similar. I think that tyres and electronic system is what changed more in the last years of MotoGP compared to 10 years ago. So go back to Michelin, and also have the standard ECU for all the different bikes. Will be a big change in the way to ride the bike, and also in the way to make races.
Well, we know that nothing's going to change for the rest of the season, and so we wish you the best of luck for everything. Thank you very much for your time, Valentino. Thanks you very much.
Thanks a lot. Ciao.
It's a known fact that MotoGP is the oldest motor racing world championship in existence, dating back to 1949. Back then, my grandmother back in England was only 16 years old, and they'd only just stopped rationing clothes after the Second World War. And the likes of George Foreman, Meryl Streep, Bruce Springsteen and Arsene Wenger, well, they were all little babies, all born in 1949. And the World Championship was split up into all sorts of different categories that raced on different days.
Fast forward to 2014 then, and the MotoGP World Championship, as it's now known, is a global round trip taking in 18 international worldwide destinations as far apart as Indianapolis and Kuala Lumpur, Donomas de Rio Hondo and Brno here. Now, back home we flick the TV on every 2 weeks or so to watch the bikes in action. In reality, there's a monumental effort going on behind the scenes here to keep this show on the road. On paper, it's 18 races, 24 riders and a world championship to fight for. But in reality, it's just a string of hotels, departure lounges and motorways for the riders, for us, and pretty much for everything you see here. The figures are quite mind-boggling.
Across your average season, all of this equipment travels some 260,000 kilometres, over 161,000 miles, either on roads or in the air. Now that's the equivalent of circumnavigating the Earth more than 6 times. For the European rounds, the trucks are available, about 400 of them, that between them rack up almost 155,000 kilometres or 100,000 miles each season. That's almost 30,000 laps of Brno. And for all of the flyaways especially, there's a monumental operation going on involving plenty of airports, planes and freight. Around 300,000 kilos of freight is being transported just by air every season, fully loading up 3 Boeing 747 freighter aircraft. Of that, 190,000 kilos is team equipment, while the rest of it is made up of Dorna gear for timekeeping, television, trackside advertising and even the BMW safety vehicles. And that's not to mention further supplies, namely tyres, fuel and oil, which are all transported by sea. In fact, the total weight of all of the cargo for just this year's Qatar Grand Prix alone was 340,000 kilograms, pretty much the same weight as 53 fully grown African elephants, or 2,125 MotoGP bikes. That would be enough to make up 88 modern-day starting grids.
And of course the whole point of this is racing motorcycles. But isn't it just a bit ironic that despite all of these weights and lengths and accreditations and dimensions and everything else, when it comes to the winner of the first 10 races of the year, well, there was only one of those.
Well, from spectacular numbers to some spectacular racing, we are going to bring you the Brno race very shortly. As you can tell, we're here in the big empty grandstand after what was a fantastic race. But first of all, just in case you didn't watch Indianapolis or can't remember, we'll give you a little bit of a recap. Amazing start, absolutely fantastic. We had Rossi-Dovizioso side by side going into the first corner, a real melee of bikes, and it was Rossi who was leading the early stages. Fantastic fight actually with Dovizioso, doing great on the Ducati. As they touched, they actually let Marc Marquez and Jorge Lorenzo through. Lorenzo having a great race, so was Marc Marquez. Just further back, Dani Pedrosa, he had opted for the harder option front tyre. Most of the guys had gone with the medium, but he managed to catch up with Dovizioso and managed to pass him. And in the end, things separated ever so slightly, and it was Marc Marquez who took win number 10 from 10, with Lorenzo and Rossi rounding out the podium. Well, coming to Brno, the question on everyone's lips was he going to make it 11 out of 11 and end up on the top spot of the podium once more? Now, I'm not going to give anything away, but it was an absolutely spectacular race. Now, he was on pole position. Next to him, two Ducatis, both the Andreas, Iannone and Dovizioso, but they had the softer option rear end, obviously an option Marquez can't use. Right behind them, Jorge Lorenzo, he'd gone for a softer option front tyre. Dani Pedrosa looking in incredible form all weekend, as well as Valentino Rossi, who, despite having a crash and hurting his little finger, was very quick. And going into turn one, the Ducati horsepower was leading. Iannone ahead of Dovizioso. Pedrosa got a fantastic start. Marc Marquez didn't get the best of starts, but for the spectators that was fantastic, because he had a bit of an old Moto2 battle with his old rival Iannone. Those two going fairing to fairing, absolutely spectacular. Pedrosa's form absolutely incredible, and Lorenzo not quite keeping up, but always a little bit of a margin there. Marquez just didn't look to be himself. He was struggling just a tiny little bit, and in the end it was actually Rossi that started gaining pace, caught up and overtook Marquez, and that's how it stayed until the end. So Marquez off the podium for the first time this year. I don't think many people were expecting that, but Dani Pedrosa, a well-deserved win ahead of Jorge Lorenzo and Valentino Rossi. We should give a mention out though to Iannone and Dovizioso, who literally had a race-long battle, very, very close, and it was Iannone who came out top in the end. It wasn't Marc Marquez who made it 11 out of 11, but it was Repsol Honda with 11 out of 11 for a well-deserved win from Dani Pedrosa.
Well, he didn't do it then, did he? In the end, Dani Pedrosa becomes the man to stop Marc Marquez. Still a massive championship lead though, isn't it, for the world champion? Let's take a look. 77 points, a slightly reduced margin then of 77 points for Marquez over Dani Pedrosa. Jorge Lorenzo closing in on Valentino Rossi, only 36 behind now. His Yamaha teammate is still a long way to go in the world championship. Pol Espargaro jumps back behind his brother Aleix, courtesy of that slip-up for Pol when he's lost the front end this afternoon. Well, there's some good beers, you know, in this part of the world, and they certainly brewed up a good race for us, didn't they, this afternoon. Next up then, Silverstone in England. Will this just be a blip in the Marc Marquez sensational year, or are the others really back for good? We're off to England next then. Get the barbecue ready. It won't rain.